I'm going to serve as moderator on this event. But first, I'd like to pass it over to Senator Murray for opening remarks.
Claire, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody on this call. I'm so excited to hear from all of you today about the American Rescue Plan, how it has helped some of our cultural institutions in King County make it through what has been an especially difficult time for our arts and culture community. You know, back when we were writing the American Rescue Plan at the beginning of this year, I went out and I asked a lot of people from every community in our state, parents, teachers, small business owners, local artists, everyone in between, what they needed from the federal government to get through this pandemic. And I relied on a lot of conversations with folks like people that are on this call to get a sense of what Washington State really needed. We got shots into arms. We reopened our schools safely. We provided direct relief to families through the child tax credit and a whole lot more to get Washington State back up and running. One really critical part of the American Rescue Plan and our previous relief packages was to provide small business money and especially live entertainment venues. The Rescue Plan actually helped our small business and nonprofits in the arts community keep their doors open by continuing the PPP loans to help small businesses and nonprofits keep their staff employed, including more than $1 billion in relief specifically for live venues through our Save Our Stages Act, which made venues eligible for up to $10 million in federal support. I know, like everyone on this call, that live entertainment venues are the heart and soul of our local communities. And this is about saving jobs as well as arts and culture. So I want all of you to know I am pushing again for the Senate to take up the Save Our Stages Extension Act, which will extend the timeline then for our live entertainment venues to actually use federal dollars as we set aside them for them. That legislation, if we can get it passed, will extend the deadline from the end of this year to the spring of 2023. We also worked really hard to make sure we had flexible funding for our state and local governments so they could meet local needs. And that is really key because that's precisely what King County Executive Constantine was able to do. And we were able to secure even more than $430 million for the county in American Rescue Plan. So I'm glad King County took some of that funding to support arts institutions. And I look forward to hearing from all of you today how it helped you as you continue to create art and do the work that helps make King County a really special place to call home. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I wanted to be on this call today to hear from all of you, what you're doing, how you've used the money, and what we need to keep doing. So thank you so much to all of you. I'm very excited to hear about what you have to say today. So I will turn it back over to you, Claire.
Thanks, Senator Murray. So we have a really great list of roundtable members today. I'm going to begin the roundtable just by calling on each roundtable member. They can introduce themselves. They're fabulous people, and they'll tell a little bit about their stories. So first, I'd like to ask poet, artist, teacher, and mother Monique Franklin to share a little bit about her story.
Thank you so much. And thank you for creating this opportunity for community members to give feedback on our experiences. My name is Monique Franklin. I'm an artist and a small business owner of an arts organization called Inspired Child. My work involves my work as an artist, as a spoken word artist, as well as a teaching artist. And I had the opportunity to receive both an Artist Relief Fund grant, which helped me as an individual artist, as well as a Reopen Fund grant for Inspired Child. And so I'll speak mostly about the Reopen Fund because I know that we have a limited time here today. But I also wanted to talk about, I primarily serve the BIPOC community, and I do that through the vehicle of Black arts. So Black art forms of tap dance, spoken word, storytelling, and community building. And so Inspired Child was a recipient of the Reopen Fund. This was critical. One of the things that I noticed, I operate as a kind of not-for-profit business, but I contract with a lot of other artists of color in the community. Because of that, because I didn't have formal employees, I wasn't eligible for any other types of funds as a business in order to keep me afloat. And also a lot of my partnering has been with government agencies, the city, King County, granting agencies. And when COVID hit, that funding immediately stopped. And then my work with schools stopped because schools were closed. And so the Reopen Fund really allowed me to pivot and to continue to reach the community, BIPOC communities, through creating Inspired Child Studios. So the Reopen Fund allowed me to purchase equipment specifically to provide online classes, which I did not have prior to receiving that funding. It also allowed me to get the training I needed in order to run classes from my home and to work with providers that I've worked with in the past on also kind of bridging that digital divide of how do they receive instruction. I work with a lot of in-home daycares and how do they receive instruction across the digital divide. So that funding was really critical in being able to allow arts to reach Black communities at a time when the only way to reach was over the internet. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to receive that funding and what it did. I think in terms of what's still needed, I think a lot of the dollars, again, as I mentioned, a lot of the small businesses that I know don't have the 5 employees or the 10 employees to get many of the grants that are available to help businesses stay afloat. And if they would consider, the fact that I contracted with 26 other individuals in the past year as a way of looking at how can we still compensate those businesses who cannot afford maybe the healthcare and everything else that goes along with employees, but do play a critical role in our economy and a critical role in the arts world. So that's mostly what I wanted to discuss, is just to say thank you for the Reopen Fund, and the Individual Artist Fund created a bridge. I think, of course, I'm sure you've heard that people could always use more funding. And so that as we continue through COVID, it's definitely lasted longer than anyone hoped or imagined it would. So I hope that we continue to be on your minds as you're thinking about funding for artists in the community. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Monique, so much for sharing your story. And thank you for coming to us all the way from Ghana. I'm really impressed and just really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, I'm going to ask Dr. Quentin Morris to introduce himself and share his story.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Senator Murray. I'm Dr. Quinton Morris, and I wear a multitude of hats. I run an organization called Key to Change, which provides violin and viola lessons for students living in South King County. I also teach at Seattle University, and I run a show where I'm the host of a program called Unmute the Voices at Classical King FM. The pandemic was, for my organization, Key to Change, kind of a blessing in disguise in one sense. While, of course, the pandemic wreaked havoc on our world and just the whole global nation, for us, it was a bit of an opportunity for us to really kind of show and flex who we are as an organization as well as a mission. We're 4.5 years old, and students living in South King County are kind of at the bottom of the barrel, really, in the kind of Seattle-Tacoma region, in the sense that they lack so many resources, not just in the arts, but also in education. In their families lack a lot of resources. And so what we do as an organization is really try to provide a high-level, world-class education, and the vehicle for us is music. And so the pandemic was actually an opportunity for us to really demonstrate just how world-class we can be. And so I have always felt comfortable teaching online. I've been doing it for years. And so in the matter of literally 1 week, when the world shut down, we converted to being online. And so we didn't really miss a beat at all. We continued all of our classes, and word kind of spread like wildfire that Key to Change knows how to teach kids online, and our enrollment quadrupled. And then we found ourselves then working with school districts such as Highline and Renton School District, where we were now teaching their teachers how to teach online. And so in that sense, it was a major blessing for us, in the sense that we were able to really show the community who we were and the impact that we want to have on our students. We survey our students and their families regularly. Over 90% of our students had perfect attendance. If you've heard anything about the educational system during COVID and students learning online, you know that most kids didn't turn their cameras on. All of our students, we developed a strategy where students were engaging and turning their cameras on and learning. And over 95% of our students indicated that they felt they made enormous progress during COVID. And our retention rate over the last 4.5 years has been the average student being in our program for 4 years. And so that's been our competitive advantage. I would say that in terms of funding, we needed more funding because we had such a demand, and there were so many people who actually were interested in taking lessons and interested in our academic programs as well. And so in that sense, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do here? And so the COVID relief funds and that were provided through the federal government really helped us in being able to maximize our potential and really provide a greater impact on the people of South King County. So I am forever grateful for that, and I'm so thankful for culture and for you, of course, Senator Murray, really standing by arts organizations and individuals and allowing them to really thrive during this horrific pandemic that we've been under for the last 20 months or so. So that's just a little bit about who we are, and I really appreciate the tremendous support and value that you all provide to us as arts organizations so that we can continue to provide our services and execute our mission to our communities.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. And one of your students from Renton, she performed like a Zoom board meeting for us, and it was incredible. And she talked about her experience there. So it was great for Culture to get that opportunity. So thank you for your story.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great. Next, I'm going to go to Monique with TeenTix, and she'll introduce herself and her organization.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm also Monique. I don't usually get in a room with two Moniques, so that's kind of fun today. Monique Courcy, I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director of TeenTix, and TeenTix is a youth service organization, and we work squarely in the arts. Our goal is to provide access to the arts, whatever that might mean for a young person. We do that through a variety of methods, whether it be ticket prices or helping them navigate transportation, learning how to find events, becoming familiar with their community and the arts opportunities around them. Those interested in becoming arts leaders, our next generation of cultural workers, arts patrons, or journalists. So we have a variety of different programs that support young people in finding their own path and valuing their own voice in the community. So I'll just say, similarly to what Quinton was saying earlier, we actually found opportunities during pandemic to flex the organization's focus to prioritize the needs of our youth during pandemic. And first, we did that by directly asking teens what they wanted us to do within the first couple weeks. And they immediately said they wanted opportunities to process, digest, examine all of the social justice movements that were happening around them. Some were really close to protests in their backyard, and they just wanted an opportunity to look at that, but they wanted to do so through an arts lens. And so that kind of gave us the opportunity to develop a new realm of programming for TeenTix. They wanted to hear from artists of color who were using their work for activism. So we developed a Zoom workshop series for that. We actually had an increase in teen participation. And again, teens actually showed up. They continued to show up. They turned on their Zoom cameras. They participated in conversations. We had teens from all over the globe. So it was like a new, different way of navigating different time zones, different relationships, building relationships with people of different backgrounds and experiences for teens that were generally used to meeting each other living in King County. And that also meant that TeenTix staff, and I know this happened for a lot of other smaller youth serving organizations in the arts too, meant that we had to kind of do things in a new way, where we had to work differently to ensure students had access to the technology that they needed. So providing technology, whether that meant like driving around town, delivering computers or recording equipment, what that might be, whatever the student needed to make sure they had that. Extra things like Zoom hang sessions in the evening where they just wanted to sit together and be part of community, maybe watch a movie together and just chat because they were missing their friends. And there was a point, when schools even were asking for help from the arts youth nonprofits because they were unable to reach all of their students. And so I thought that was an interesting way because we did continue to see our students and even more students that we had maybe not connected to previously because they, I like to say like teens didn't go anywhere. And in fact, they really did need youth service organizations and arts more than ever during that time. So kind of another thing I wanted to touch on is just kind of what more could we use funding wise and support wise. I think if we're investing in the industry, arts industry at large, we need to also double down on arts education as a cohesive and integral part of education. And to make sure that young people's voices are shaping our arts and cultural leadership, the cultural policy, our entrepreneurship, creative economy, and just looking at bringing young people into how we're looking at creating a just society. Creative economy, it is culturally rooted and has a positive impact on community health. Arts, when arts are fostered in cultural communities, it's a participatory form of examining and having commentary on and providing movement building around critical race theory, which is also an incredibly important part of continuing to build the organizations community-wise and our cultural community. So something just regarding funding. So for example, Monique Franklin mentioned this earlier, but I'd like to emphasize the way we can help smaller organizations participate in larger efforts such as Save the Stages. Allowing contractors to be a part of the funding equation would be really important. TeenTix, for example, our budget's under $300,000. We rely heavily on interns who are stipended or contract workers to do the things that we do. We don't have a big staff at all. And so tying in funds to things like mortgage and health insurance is great, but it doesn't allow for a lot of opportunity for small orgs to make use of those funds when we don't have the capacity to kind of do that in the first place. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Probably close to my time too.
You're doing fine.
Okay,
Thank you, Monique. And I have to say, all 4 culture staff were really excited to see you on this. We think your organization's awesome and you serve such a great, we just think it's a unique organization and you do really well for teenagers in King County. So finally, our last roundtable panelist is an artist and her name is Stephanie Morales, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself. See, Stephanie, you're still, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I just realized my sound was off. Hi, my name is Stephanie Morales. I am a visual artist, a painter, some examples of my work here. I also am the owner of Axum Arts and Entertainment, which hosts a variety of events and was especially impacted at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'll get into that in a moment. And then I am also more recently, in the last 6 months, the founder of the Link Project, which is actually a pivot and kind of birthed out of the pandemic. So as a visual artist, right at the beginning, a lot of my work, I was contracted with Seattle Public Library, with the public schools. I do a lot of, it was an events and entertainment company. So that was immediately impacted. I did have to shift. And so very early on, I was able to get some artist relief funding from For Culture. And that was able to kind of sustain me and where I could get my bearings and also be able to get some of the equipment that I needed to quickly pivot and go virtual, which I then was able to do. And that opened an entirely new audience and an entirely new service that I was able to provide that has continued on now. And I've also been able to build relationships with different, you know, with whether it's with some of the schools, with some of the other programs like ACE or Boys and Girls Club, things like that, places like that, that then hired me to teach at those places. So I built relationships, and that actually furthered my business. In talking about the link, so again, that funding was super, super important. It came at just the right time. Not only as I'm a single parent, I'm an artist, you know, it's a lot. So it was really impactful for me to have that at that moment. Then once I was able to, you know, kind of get my bearings, and like a lot of other artists, I think that some of us found that the pandemic was both a curse and a blessing at the same time. I think it really opened the world's eyes to how important art is, not only in terms of just, you know, art can mental health wise and therapeutic value of it, but it actually has a lot of functionality. As many of the other people that have spoken here, art is a vehicle to lots of other things. It is the entry point to things like education, social change, lots of different things. So I think that the pandemic really highlighted that, and I hope that that is not forgotten as we move forward. The other thing that happened during the pandemic is that I noticed that a lot of people started businesses. Lots of people started small businesses, or small businesses that they had already began really thriving, and there became a culture around wanting to support that. And I opened the Link Project, which I am currently in the space, and I'll give you a little zoom around in a minute. But the Link Project is a collaborative retail space, art gallery, and event space in the Central District. It focuses mainly on local Black creatives and entrepreneurs. And so this is some work that I was kind of already doing through Axum Arts in terms of bringing artists together and doing a lot of like cooperative economics and collaborative work to highlight each other's. I call it cross-pollination, where if I'm in a room and you're in a room and our audiences come together and they kind of get to meet me and vice versa. And so that was kind of just seeing so many small businesses open and seeing them thrive, and seeing how great their products were and how beautiful their artwork was, and the value that they were bringing to the community, and the value of having a space, whether it be virtual or otherwise, to gather together. I was able to open the Link Project, and I did receive another bit of funding as well that was helpful towards that. My biggest piece in being in this panel is to say that we continue to need funding. For me, I can speak for myself. You know, it's a one-woman show here. So on top of being a visual artist, a mother, a shop owner, and attempting to use all of that to be a community builder, funding is super, super important. And when you provide funding to people like the people that are on this panel and other community builders and artists, it funnels out so much further. Like, it echoes out and just multiplies through the hands of those people. So it's really, really important, and it's very, very impactful. I could tell you 100 stories of stuff without trying to like speak on myself. It's just because providing a space and then letting all of those people that are doing that work flourish in that has been kind of the work that I've been doing, I've been seeing, and I hope that through funding that you guys will continue to consider how big of an impact that has on the outlying communities around us.
Are you going to give us? Oh, there you go.
I'm gonna give you a little zoom.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm at my desk, but you know, we've got our little plant area. We've got different products. We use that backspace for meetings and things like that. We have drop-in art making. We've got clothing and some food and stuff like that in here. So I'm in here about 7 days a week. There is always something happening. The shop is open, I'm here. And then evenings and weekends, we've got classes and community meetings and events. And just, I have it as a workspace. People can just drop in and, you know, hop on the Wi-Fi and sit back there and work or have meetings. So yeah, it's literally a resource to the community. And I try to do it at a really low barrier thing. If I could just give it away, I would. But yeah, in doing that is part of the reason that we need funding. So yeah, very important work. I feel like that we're doing here.
Thank you, Stephanie, so much for sharing your story. And For Culture, really, staff really love you and your artwork too.
Stephanie, what do you do with your kids?
Well, luckily, you know, my son is 11 and my daughter is 16, so they're a little bit older. They're able to walk back and forth to school. I actually take my son to school in the morning and then they walk here. They actually come here and hang out quite a bit. And then, yeah, my daughter is very helpful. You know, I was the oldest child, so I never want to say built-in babysitter, but she helps a lot. So.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much to all of our roundtable panelists. This has been great. I want to I'm going to move to my executive director at For Culture, Brian J. Carter, and he's going to give some concluding remarks before Senator Murray, you conclude the session.
So good morning all, I'm Brian Carter, Executive Director at For Culture. And I think as everybody knows, we're the Cultural Development Authority of King County. So I think I have the best job in the world where I get to look after and care for the entire cultural sector in King County. And we do that through grants, we do that through commissions, and hopefully technical assistance, love, and support. That's what we try and do. First, I just want to thank Senator Murray for pulling us all together, you and your staff. Also thank all the panelists. These are all friends of For Culture, friends of mine, friends of the community. So thank you for sharing your stories and waking up early to do it. Appreciate that, you guys. I think what I'll share, and I'll make it really brief, is that For Culture is really fortunate to be a recipient of the 2 rounds of federal funding, both CARES Act, which gave us about $4.3 million to distribute to the cultural sector, and then more specifically to this called the American Rescue Plan. And that was $9.4 million that goes out to the cultural sector. And so thank you to begin with, Senator Murray, for that. Also just gratitude to the executive in King County, Dow Constantine, as well as our partners at the King County Council. They trust For Culture, they believe in our values, and they know that we can efficiently and provide access to those funds. So just a couple of things that I heard through the stories I just wanted to touch on, and that's just like resilience and necessity. All of the stories that folks told were about adaptability, they were about flexibility, they were about pivots. And I think that's what really marks the cultural sector in King County, is that when catastrophe, when tragedy, when change occur, that we stay true to those that we need to serve, those that need us. And so those pivots are essential, but trying. So just appreciation for every late night. Stephanie, you said you're there 7 days a week. I mean, that's the amount of effort and time that adaptability actually takes. And the last part is just necessity. That's what I heard. I mean, it is a tough time in this country right now, not just the pandemic, some of the social upheavals, the movements that we're seeing that are trying to bring about change. It's been a trying 2 years for everybody, but arts and culture always provide that common ground, that civic commons. And I don't think that's always a comfortable space, nor should it be, but it's definitely a necessary place, because we have got to come together, and arts and culture is such a vehicle for us to make meaning, to make sense, to be able to move forward and hopefully do that together. And I think arts and culture is such an important vehicle for that. As it relates to the American Rescue Plan Act, I think one of the great features of that funding was the fact that it went to local governments. I love the NEA, I love IMLS, but it takes a significant application, it takes a significant waiting period. It takes a lot of effort for individual cultural workers and organizations to access those funds. The federal government, saying we believe in and support local governments, here are the dollars, allowed Executive Constantine and the council to shoot that money right over to us. We had our program set up, I think it was 1 month after the pandemic hit. We were able to get ARPA funds out the door as quickly as possible. So the efficiency and the lowering of barriers with local government support from the federal government is huge. And then lastly, I'll just touch on the fact that this pandemic, what we're going through, is not experienced evenly or equitably by any means. I always say the arts and culture sector is undercapitalized. I think we would all agree to that. I use the analogy, it's like a blanket, like cultural support, philanthropy, corporate dollars. It's like a blanket. It's a thin blanket on the best of days. Those that are in the middle of that blanket are those that have historically received the most funds. Those at the edges, which tend to be BIPOC artists, cultural practitioners, or BIPOC-led organizations, tend to not get as much. So for us, so grateful for the $9.4 million, but the question was, how do we equitably distribute those funds to those who have historically not had access to it? So for me, my work at For Culture, Claire and the staff that's on the phone, it was was about these equity mechanisms that we included in all of our federal programs, and which have translated to all of our other bread and butter programs that prioritize those folks who work in and live in communities that have been historically underinvested in. And I think that's a critical part of this safety net that For Culture tries to provide and that the federal government supported. So I think understanding that this systemic racism that we're all facing, that we have a responsibility in the distribution of these funds to address past wrongs. And for me, it's really simple. It is a redistribution of wealth that helps the sector to grow, to evolve, and I think to actually be more equitable. It is not the process for me, it is the outcome. And I think the folks that are on the call today have demonstrated that, is that when you support good people doing good work, you open up all types of new avenues of access and participation. And that gets, I think, us to a much better place about the necessity, the resilience, such that it's for all of us in King County. So anyway, great gratitude to you, Senator Murray. Thank you for the time. And I'll conclude there and kick it back over to Claire, I think.
To Senator Murray.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. All of you are so inspiring. I will take your heart and soul and spirit with me as we continue to work our way through this pandemic that changes on a daily basis, but knowing that you're all there and surviving and helping other people to get through it in such a positive way really helps me know that what we're doing is on the right track. And I will keep doing everything I can to keep that money flowing to all of you, because it just clearly has a huge impact on so many people in ways that oftentimes we don't even think about. So thank you all for this input. I so appreciate it. Look forward to hearing your continued success and someday seeing you in person.
All right, that concludes most of today's event, but I do want to flag we have time for one question. If we have any from the reporters in the room right now, I would just go ahead and unmute yourself. Let us know what outlet you're from and ask your question. All right,
We've overwhelmed them with great information, so they're all good, I think.
Great, okay. This was recorded and we will be distributing this widely. If you come up with any questions, you know where to find us. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much. Take care. Stay healthy.
Thank you, you as well.